All right. Let's see if I still know how to do this. Hi there, folks. It's been a little while. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Water Cooler Quarterback. It's good to see you. It's been a long time. I have not really had time to do much of the division breakdowns and whatnot that we did last year because I was a little busy this summer getting married. So definitely an important thing to be spending all the time on, but kind of a added benefit of all the wedding planning and prep for that and all that kind of stuff is the off-season went incredibly fast. So fast that I didn't have a chance to make any videos. But here we are today. Kickoff is in, less than 12 hours, so if I'm going to do any predicting about this season, I'd better get to it. Before we really get into everything, I just want to go ahead and set some expectations. I don't know exactly how in-depth or how consistent I'm going to be on this channel from here on out. I'd really like to be consistent, but at the end of the day, this is a hobby. This is something I'm doing for fun, and if it ever stops being fun, then there's really no point in doing it, right? So I am going to be maybe a little less consistent than I was last year because, let's face it, last year I burned myself out. We got through week, 10, 11 or so. We were doing predictions. We were doing all the YouTube shorts. We were talking about, the news and breaking down what happened in the previous week. It was a lot. There was a lot going on, and I just couldn't keep up with it all. I want to make sure that I'm still having fun with it all this year. I'd love to still be able to talk about all of this kind of stuff with you guys, but in order for that to happen, I have to be able to take a little bit of a break, be a little bit more casual about it. Half of this is just me telling myself that because I need to hear it, but the other half is also just telling you so you're not waking up one morning wondering where your video is. Some weeks I'm going to post, some weeks I'm probably not. We're going to be a little loosey-goosey about it. But all of that aside, I want to go ahead and break down what I think is going to happen in the 2024 season of the NFL because I am super pumped about this season. There is so much fun stuff that's going to happen. I mean, there's great storylines for us to follow, and just about every team has something interesting going on. Last year, when we broke down all of the divisions and picked the winners and everything like that, we started with the NFC West, went to the AFC West, NFC North, AFC North, and so on and so on. We're just going to flip the script this year. We're going to start with the AFC East. So, without talking about it too much, let's just go ahead and jump right into it with the New England Patriots. The Patriots were not great last year, and they were so bad even that they had the third overall pick in this year's draft, where they took North Carolina quarterback Drake May. Now, he's not going to be starting the season because, let's face it, the Patriots don't have much infrastructure to support a rookie quarterback. Their O-line is not good. They don't have a lot of great receiving weapons. And, they've got Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson in the backfield, but even those two can leave a little bit to be desired at times. So, I do think that Drake May, sitting out to begin with is a good idea. However, I do think that he's going to be starting by about the midpoint of the year, and I think that he's going to prove to be the right choice at third overall. The Patriots didn't have much of a choice to make. They needed a quarterback desperately, and he was the third of the top three guys. So it's not like they really need to be proven right, but I do think that Drake May is going to show the world that, hey, he deserved to be picked third overall. That brings us to the New York Jets. And man, last year was really tough for them. Aaron Rodgers, my bold prediction for this year is that Aaron Rodgers completes at least one pass. Now, you might think that, hey, that's kind of an obvious one, but he didn't complete one last year, so that would be a step in the right direction this year. I'm kind of kidding, of course. My actual prediction is a little more in-depth than that, but I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to return to Aaron Rodgers from a couple of years ago. It might be tough, and I wouldn't be surprised if it takes him a while because he was out all of last year. His last year in Green Bay, he wasn't super great, but I think that he is going to step it up again and be the Aaron Rodgers that we know. And with that, the main beneficiary is going to be Garrett Wilson. His number one wide receiver there in New York, I think, is going to enter the Offensive Player of the Year conversation. I think he is easily going to move into the A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra, Jamar Chase stratosphere of wide receivers. I think we're going to respect Garrett Wilson's game a lot more by the end of the year. That brings us to the Miami Dolphins, who the prediction for them is kind of tough to quantify, but I've got them as just taking the next step. And honestly, I don't really know how to explain that. I don't really know like how many wins that means, but I think we'll all just kind of see it. I think for a while they've had the, well, who have they really beaten type narrative surrounding them. And that can be a tough thing to shake. But I think by season's end, we'll all respect the Dolphins as true AFC contenders. Moving on to the Buffalo Bills, I do think this is actually going to be a tough year for the Bills. The Bills have run the AFC East for years now, but they have suffered significant losses on both sides of the ball. Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, all gone from their secondary. Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, their wide receiver 1 and 2, are both gone as well. Matt Milano, their star linebacker, is going to be missing time with an injury. So, man, the Bills are going to be in a tough spot. That lends some opportunity to their other guys on the team, though, namely Dalton Kincaid. I think Dalton Kincaid is going to take on a Travis Kelce type importance in this offense. Do I think he's going to put up Travis Kelce's stats? No, relax. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that he is going to be as important for the Bills as Kelce is for the Chiefs. I think the offense is going to run through him. So, ultimately, that's the entirety of the AFC East. In terms of division winners and how I think the whole division is going to shake out, I do have the Miami Dolphins winning the division. I think the Jets come in second. Bills are going to struggle a little bit, but still be pretty good coming in third. And then I think there is a pretty significant drop-off to the fourth spot with the New England Patriots. Moving along to the NFC East, we start with the Washington Commanders, a team that I'm really kind of torn about. They had the second overall pick in the draft, and they took Heisman Trophy winner Jayden Daniels out of LSU. A great quarterback in college who, for all we've seen, should translate right into the NFL. I think he should be a good NFL quarterback. But you've also got some guys that I think are really good for his development, and some guys that are, maybe just a little too old on the team. Scary Terry is a great wide receiver. I think he is criminally underrated, so he'll be good for Jayden Daniels. I really like Brian Robinson out of the backfield, but Austin Eckler, I think, is kind of done for. And they also bring in Bobby Wagner at the linebacker spot. I'm from Seattle. I get it. You don't have to tell me how good Bobby Wagner is. I know how good Bobby Wagner is, but that just feels like a signing of no one else is taking him. Let's just see what he's got left. I'm a little worried about how he's actually going to do for their defense. This is definitely a rebuild for the Commanders. New coach, new quarterback, heck, new ownership. They are really starting from scratch, and it may be kind of a tough year, but I am looking to see some good things out of Jayden Daniels. That takes us to the New York Giants, and whoo boy, you want to talk about a rough year? The Giants are in for a rough year. They were picking 6th in this year's draft, and after the first 3 picks were all quarterbacks, a wide receiver goes to Arizona, offensive lineman goes to LA, they really had several choices of what they wanted to do. They could have taken the national champion J.J. McCarthy. They could have taken the national champion runner-up Michael Penix. They could have taken Bo Nix. They could have taken any of those quarterbacks to replace Daniel Jones, who, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people around the league, is not the guy. They decided to go with a wide receiver who, is a good wide receiver. Malik Nabers should be really good. If it weren't for Marvin Harrison, he would easily be the top wide receiver in this draft. But at the end of the day, who's getting him the ball? If Daniel Jones can't throw the ball to him, Malik Nabers is not going to be a very effective weapon for them. So I'm not sure if Malik Nabers was the right choice there. It really seems like they doubled down on this Daniel Jones thing. You know, they chose to pay Daniel Jones rather than paying Saquon. Saquon ends up leaving the building, and, instead of just saying, you know what, hey, we made a mistake, let's go get the quarterback of the future, they doubled down on this Daniel Jones idea by getting him a wide receiver. I'm not sure that's the right choice. I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy for the job, and I think the Giants are in for a really, really tough year. My official prediction for the Giants is that by the end of the season, it is clear that Daniel Jones has got to go. Speaking of Saquon Barkley, we move on to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles have lost some key pieces. Jason Kelce at the center spot and Fletcher Cox on the D-line. You know, those are significant pieces lost. But they also do bring in, as I was saying, Saquon Barkley. Saquon is going to be a massive boost to their run game, which, we expected to be really good last year. Wasn't quite as good as we thought it was going to be with DeAndre Swift, but I think bringing in Saquon alongside A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Jalen Hurts at quarterback, the Eagles are going to have a scary good offense. Ultimately, I think Saquon is going to remind everybody exactly who he is this year. The last couple of seasons, we've known Saquon is good, but it's always kind of like, oh yeah, he's with the Giants. Now that he's with a competent team in the Eagles, I think we're all going to be like, oh yeah, we forgot just how good Saquon is. And then to the division winners from last year, Dallas's offseason has been kind of a mess. There's a saying that if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. That pretty much sums up Dallas's offseason. They didn't really do much. Yes, of course they had the draft and they added pieces there, but not a ton of free agent signings. This is largely the same team that it was last year. And, that's still a good team. They won the division, but they were one and done in the playoffs. So the idea of just running it back basically the same way, I don't know if I agree with. You lose guys like Tony Pollard. Jerry Jones is talking about going all in. And Derrick Henry is literally sitting right there in the free agent market, and you don't go get Derrick Henry. Jerry Jones didn't want Derrick Henry to have a star on the side of his helmet. You know how many jerseys that would have sold? That would have been incredible. But no, I guess signing Dalvin Cook is the solution there, and bringing back Zeke. Yeah, I'm not thrilled for the Cowboys. At the end of the day, it's Dak Prescott throwing the ball to CeeDee Lamb. So, they're still going to be good, but I'm a little worried about them because I don't think they improved all that much. For this division, the NFC East, I do have yet another year, 20-something years now of no repeat winners. I do think that the Eagles are going to topple the Cowboys, and the Eagles win the division. Cowboys come in second, Commanders in third, and Giants way down in fourth. Moving on to the AFC East, the Tennessee Titans are a team that, talking about Derrick Henry, I think has kind of lost their identity. And the reason for that is, Derrick Henry was their identity for so long. They've got Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Will Levis in year 2 could be, maybe he turns out to be a good quarterback for him. But I'm not sure how the Titans are going to do. They do have a good running back tandem in Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears, who I think, will be solid. But this is kind of a figure it out year for them. I think they have to kind of pick a direction and follow it. They're going to figure out, hey, are we a passing team? Are we a defensive team? Are we a running team? What is it that we do well? Let's go ahead and move in that direction. I think that's really what this year is for. That brings us to the Indianapolis Colts, who get their second-year quarterback Anthony Richardson back, and I think he's going to come out the gates real hot. He only played in a handful of games last year before a season-ending injury, but I think we're going to see a meteoric rise from this guy. I'm talking like maybe not the MVP type stuff that we saw from Lamar Jackson, but the jump that we saw from Lamar Jackson with his running quarterback ways, I think is what we're going to see from Anthony Richardson. This dude is huge, and I think that he's one of the most athletic guys in the NFL. And I really think that, if you fake the handoff to Jonathan Taylor and then you have to deal with Anthony Richardson potentially running, that's going to be an absolute mess for NFL defenses. So I think Anthony Richardson is going to have a really good year. I think he's going to lead the Colts very, very far. I'm pretty high on the Colts this year. Then the Jacksonville Jaguars were absolutely humming last year until Trevor Lawrence got hurt. And I think they're going to get back to that level of play. I think they're going to be able to fight for the division. And, last year we looked at the AFC South, said, this division is absolutely terrible. The Jaguars are going to win this, no problem. CJ Stroud with the Texans, Will Levis on the Titans, Anthony Richardson with the Colts. All of a sudden, this is one of the best divisions in the league. And so it's it is actually saying something to say that the Jags are going to be in contention for the division. I mean, they've got some really good weapons in rookie Brian Thomas Jr. at wide receiver. Christian Kirk, I'm a big fan of. Gabe Davis comes over from the Bills. They got Travis Etienne in the backfield. They've got some serious weapons. And then Josh Hines Allen, or is it Allen Hines? I'm sorry, I don't recall. But coming off the edge on defense, man, I mean, I think the Jags can be really good this year, and they were really good last year until the injury. So I think they are going to be competing for that top spot in the division. And then finally, of course, the winners of the division last year were the Houston Texans. I'd like to point out that last year I kind of said, hey, I'm kind of liking what Houston is doing. Maybe keep an eye on them. I think they're going to be better than people expect. But I'll also admit, I also did not see that amount of success in 1 year. Head coach DeMeco Ryans did a fantastic job. CJ Stroud had one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen, and they just added to this team this year, bringing in Stephon Diggs from Buffalo. So between Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, and Nico Collins, I'm predicting 3,000-yard receivers for the Texans. I know that's kind of crazy to say, but I mean, CJ Stroud is phenomenal. If he does what he did last year, I don't think 3,000-yard receivers is out of the question. Winner of this division, I've got the Texans winning it again. I think they are the most complete team. I think CJ Stroud is the best quarterback in that division. I think Anthony Richardson is going to be very good, and I think Trevor Lawrence gets back to his really solid ways. So I do think it's kind of a 3-team race here for the top, but I do think the Texans pull it out. I think that they take the top spot. Colts and Jags will take spots 2 and 3 respectively, and then the Titans bring up the rear, kind of like the AFC East, where there's a little bit of a drop from the third spot to the fourth. That brings us to the NFC South, where we start with the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Panthers were undoubtedly the worst team in the league last year. I mean, they earned the first overall pick, but they didn't even get to use it because they traded it away for the right to pick Bryce Young in the prior draft. But they bring in a brand new head coach in Dave Canales, a guy who had got the best out of Geno Smith in Seattle and the best out of Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. So I think that he can do wonders for Bryce Young going into year 2. They get a new offensive coordinator, brand new weapons for Bryce Young like Xavier Legette, Deontay Johnson, Jonathan Brooks. I mean, this offense looks very different than it did last year. Last year, I said that their offense was kind of a Frankenstein's monster of other successful teams' offensive pieces. They had guys like Miles Sanders, Hayden Hurst, Adam Thielen. Those guys are no longer the highlights of this team. They have new, young guys that are going to grow and develop with Bryce Young. They've got a good vet in Deontay Johnson. I think that this team is going to be much better than it was. A lot of people still seem to think that the Panthers are going to be one of the worst teams in the league. I don't think that's true. I'm not saying that they're going to have a winning season or that they're going to make the playoffs, but I think that we are going to have some respect for Bryce Young by the time this year is over. Then that brings us to the Atlanta Falcons, who had a rather puzzling, is that the best word for it? Let's go with that. They had one of the most puzzling off seasons. I mean, you sign Kirk Cousins, who's sort of, you've been a quarterback away for all these years now. You finally bring in a guy that is, proven and is going to be able to make use of Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. And then with the 8th overall pick, you draft Michael Penix? I mean, I get it. Michael Penix is very good. And I totally understand the Green Bay style, draft the quarterback before you need him, let him sit, learn behind the vet, and in a couple of years, he's going to be outstanding. I understand that methodology. I just don't understand why it was Penix. Penix is very good, but he's also one of, if not the oldest quarterbacks in this draft class. He's the quarterback that's ready to go fresh out the box, so I don't really get why he was the guy you picked, because if all goes well with Kirk, which hopefully it does because you spent all this money on him, I mean, Michael Penix isn't going to be playing until he's almost 30. So I don't know. I'm getting into the weeds here. I don't really understand the pick. I understand it in principle. Maybe you should have gone with J.J. McCarthy if that was the idea. That's all aside. Look, they replaced the production that they could have had by spending that 8th overall pick on maybe an edge rusher or something like that. They made up for that by going out and getting Matthew Judon, Justin Simmons at safety. So I think their defense is going to be solid. Kirk Cousins is going to be very good, far better than the quarterbacks they've had the past couple of years. I think Kyle Pitts and Drake London are going to significantly benefit from having Cousins in there. I think that the Falcons are going to be one of the league's top offenses. And I don't think I'm, really shaking anything up by saying that. But I think that they are going to be pretty good. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints, here at Water Cooler Quarterback, I like to stay real positive. But then you get to a team like the Saints. And I don't know how to do that here, because my official prediction for the Saints is that head coach Dennis Allen is going to be the first coach fired. I just don't see a lot in New Orleans that I like. And, I like the team in general. When I was growing up, I loved rooting for the Saints. Drew Brees, loved him. I don't think Derek Carr is the same guy that he was. I like Chris Olave at wide receiver. He's really good, and they've got a good defense. But, man, I don't know. They're a tricky one because so many of their stats paint the picture of them being like a top 5 NFL team. I don't have all the numbers and all the breakdowns and everything necessarily right here in front of me, but go watch, bootleg football. They have a breakdown of the Saints that is just kind of mind-boggling, where their ranks for offensive plays and defensive plays, they're phenomenal, but just nothing really came together, and they weren't a very good team. I don't understand it. I don't think anyone understands it. The Saints are weird, and I don't think it's going to go well. Dennis Allen has always kind of felt like a placeholder ever since Sean Payton left, and I think now is just kind of the time that they eventually move on from him. And then for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think Rachaad White is going to have a breakout year this year out of the backfield. I think with a beefed up O-line, he should be a far more efficient back than he was last year. And the Bucs, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield, they're scrappy. I like them. I mean, they won the division last year. Everybody's picking the Falcons to win the division this year, myself included. But I think the Buccaneers are going to be right there fighting for that number 1 spot alongside the Falcons the entire time. So I would not be surprised if they end up winning. As for my official picks for how the division shakes out, I do have the Atlanta Falcons winning it, followed by the Bucs, Panthers coming in 3rd, and then in 4th, the Saints. I'm so sorry, New Orleans. But that moves us up north to the AFC North with the Cincinnati Bengals. And the only reason that the Bengals came in fourth last year is because they had no Joe Burrow for several games. But, they were still a team with a winning record. They were still 9-8. And I think that just goes to show the rest of the team that they have around Joe Burrow, just waiting for him to come back. Now that he is back, you get him cooking with Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is in a contract year. They've got that, really good defense. I think Joe Burrow reasserts himself as a top 10, maybe top 5 QB, maybe even pushing for an MVP type season. I really think that the Bengals are going to come back out and show everyone like, hey, that time that we went to the Super Bowl, that wasn't a fluke. Last year, we had kind of a down year. Joe Burrow was hurt. Jamar Chase was hurt at times. It was kind of weird from start to finish. This year, I think the Bengals are here to play. Then you got the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, man, Russell Wilson is on his last leg here. There's no other way to put it. If Russ doesn't play well in Pittsburgh, I think he's basically out of the league. If not, he'll be, he'll resort to being a journeyman backup at that point, which is really sad to say. But I just don't think he can pull this team along with him, or rather, I don't know if the team can pull him along with them. I from day one had a lot of faith in Justin Fields. I don't know if he should be the starter over Russ. I don't think there is a right answer to who should be starting. But the Steelers are paying essentially no money for either of these quarterbacks. So whoever plays the majority of the season, I don't think there's a right answer. I don't think there's a wrong answer. I don't really know what the Steelers are going to do. It's a huge question mark at the quarterback position. A team that I like otherwise. I really like Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. I really like George Pickens out wide. Pat Freiermuth is a good tight end, and their defense is fantastic. Cam Hayward just got extended. But, man, it's going to be tough with Russ and Justin Fields under center. And I hate to say this, but my bold prediction for the year is that this is going to be Mike Tomlin's first losing season. Moving on to the Cleveland Browns, man, talk about a quarterback that just isn't who he used to be. Deshaun Watson is cooked. The Browns will only go as far as Deshaun Watson can take them. They went to the playoffs last year largely because of Joe Flacco. When Joe Flacco came in after Deshaun was hurt, it was clear that Joe Flacco had a better command of this team than Deshaun did. We have not seen Deshaun Watson be elite in so long. There was the year that he was suspended for a majority of the season. There was the year that he completely sat out because he wasn't happy in Houston with the situation there. The year before that, they, I believe, had 4 wins. It's been a long time since we've seen Deshaun Watson be really, really good, which is, all the legal stuff aside, too bad, because he was really good. He was one of the next generation of great quarterbacks alongside Mahomes, Lamar, all that. So it's really sad to see this just fall from grace from him both on and off the field. I really think that this year is going to be kind of the breaking point for Cleveland, and I think that by the year's end, I think they'll be ready to move on from Watson. And finally, the winners of the AFC North from last year, the Baltimore Ravens have added King Henry. What more is there to say? Like I mentioned with the Colts, having to make up your mind between, are you going to tackle Jonathan Taylor or Anthony Richardson? Teams are going to have to make a similar decision between Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. One is just an absolute freight train. The other is arguably the most elusive player in the NFL. Completely different styles of running, completely different ways that a defender needs to approach them. It is going to be hell for any defense trying to stop these guys. I think Derrick Henry sees probably I don't want to say he returns to the best season he's ever had, but I do think he goes for his 6,000 plus yard season, probably threatening closer to 12, maybe 1,300 yards on the ground, to be honest. I mean, I think that he is going to be fantastic in a Baltimore Ravens offense. As for how the division shakes out, I do have the Cincinnati Bengals rising from 4th place all the way up to 1st to win this division. I think the Ravens are going to be right there with them, but ultimately come up just short, coming in 2nd. The Browns are going to come in 3rd, and the Steelers are going to be way down at 4th. Going over to the NFC North, we start with the Chicago Bears. The number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, will finally be the Chicago Bears' first 4,000-yard passer. This stat gets brought up all the time. I'm sure that Chicago Bear fans are sick and tired of hearing about the fact that they have never, ever had a 4,000-yard passer. I think Caleb Williams is finally the one to do it. I mean, this guy has been lauded as, you know, the next Andrew Luck, the next this, the next that for years now. And the fact that he's finally in the NFL is super exciting. I can't wait to see what he does. I do think that he is going to be very good for the Chicago Bears. As for the Minnesota Vikings, you know, unfortunately, J.J. McCarthy is already out for the season. That's not great. But I do think that quarterback Sam Darnold will have a Baker Mayfield type resurgence in his career. And I think it will serve him well to be in this position, throwing to guys like TJ Hawkinson when he comes back, Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Addison. I think he is going to earn himself a starting job in 2025. Probably not with the Vikings because JJ McCarthy will be back, but I think that another team is going to be able to look at what Sam Darnold does this year and say, hey, you know what? You know, let's see what he can do for us this year. Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love was exceptional in the back half of the season last year. I emphasize the back half of the season. The question for him is, can he do that all the time? Can Jordan Love be the clear-cut, absolutely, you know, he is the quarterback of the future for the Packers. Can he do that for an entire season? I think he can. I think, you know, they've got a lot of really good receivers. They don't have a clear-cut number 1. If you had to pick one, I'd maybe say Jaden Reed, but Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, you know, they've two very good tight ends. I think that the Packers are going to be good. And I think Jordan Love will establish that, like, hey, that was not just like a really good 7 or 8 game stretch. I am here to stay. And I think that the Packers will unquestionably have their QB of the future. You know, I think for a good portion of this offseason, it wasn't a question, but I think in the last week or so, maybe 2 weeks, people have kind of said, well, hang on, he was only really that good for half the year. Are we sure that he's the guy? I'm pretty sure he's the guy. I think Jordan Love will be the clear-cut dude by the end of the year. And then for the Lions, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown will finally break free of this chip on his shoulder narrative. You know, it's worked really well for him. It's been effective. He has been a fantastic receiver because he has that chip on his shoulder of how many receivers were taken before him. You know, and it works great being in Detroit because that is the Detroit Lion culture right now. But I think they finally I think both Amon-Ra and the Lions themselves kind of break free of that underdog mentality this year and just accept, like, hey, we're really good at football. So I think that Amon-Ra, you know, he's already considered one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but I think he breaks into the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb territory of wide receivers. As for how the division shakes out, I do have the Lions taking it, Packers coming in second, Bears taking up the third spot, up from fourth last year, and then the Vikings, unfortunately, rounding out the final spot in the North. Moving on to the last division in the AFC, we're going to start off with the LA Chargers. And finally, you don't understand what this means to me, okay? I was not a Chargers fan, but now I'm married to a Chargers fan, so by proxy I am. you don't understand what it means to have Brandon Staley away from this team. I don't like calling for jobs. I don't even really like that I said Dennis Allen was going to be the first guy fired. I'm not calling for that guy's job. It's just what I think is going to happen. Brandon Staley was a disaster as head coach for the LA Chargers. And the fact that they replace him with Jim Harbaugh? Yes. Thank you. That's fantastic. We kind of saw the writing on the wall with that, especially once Michigan won the national championship. It was kind of clear that Harbaugh was done and looking to get back into the NFL. You know, growing up in Seattle, watching Jim Harbaugh with the Niners all those years and how good he was there, how much of a little bit of a little crazy, but he's a great coach, and I'm so excited that the Chargers have him. And he is not shy about the fact that he likes to run the ball. He will tell you straight to your face that he is going to run the ball. It is abundantly clear. They just named some 6'4", 300-pound guy as their fullback, their starting fullback. How many teams even use fullbacks anymore? Not many. Jim Harbaugh does, though. Jim Harbaugh uses a fullback, and I love it. Investments in the O-line and failure to address the wide receiver position makes me think that the Chargers are going to run the ball down your throat every single week, nonstop. I would be surprised if Justin Herbert throws 5 passes a game, to be totally honest. I wouldn't be surprised if he throws no passes a game. They are going to run the ball like crazy. I'm looking at a top 5 rushing offense this year in LA. Moving on to Denver, the biggest storyline here is, of course, Bo Nix. Can he bring an end to the quarterback carousel that's been going on at Mile High pretty much since Peyton Manning retired? He has looked really sharp in the preseason, and he's got Sean Payton's seal of approval, unlike the last guy that they had. So maybe, just maybe, it's time for us all to Bo leave. Then let's go ahead and talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. And remember how I said that I really like to be positive on this channel? I'm going to have to break that rule again. Because my bold prediction for the Vegas Raiders is I don't think Davante Adams finishes the season on this team. It was pretty clear if you've watched receiver that this guy wants out. And, once they changed coaches and they've got Antonio Pierce back as the proper head coach this year, not just the interim, it was clear that the culture changed a bit and that guys like Davante Adams and Max Crosby were far happier than they were last year, or at least to start last year. But Davante Adams is one of the best receivers in the game, and he doesn't have that long left in the NFL. And I don't think that Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell are going to cut it for one of the best in the business. So I see him finishing the year either in jet green or really any uniform other than the black and silver. I'm sorry, Raiders fans, but I can't imagine that Davante Adams is going to be happy staying in Vegas for another full season. And then finally, the Chiefs. Is there really even anything to talk about here? The only thing you'll hear about the Chiefs all year is three-peat. That and, about how Taylor Swift is or isn't ruining football. You decide. But, if we dig a little bit deeper, I am eager to see what their wide receivers can do. Last year, their wide receiver core was awful. They dropped literally everything. I'm not sure any of them actually had hands. But now they've got, Rashee Rice, who was here last year, but is not getting suspended. So hopefully he will be good this year. He was one of the bright spots in the receiver room last year. They bring in Hollywood Brown, who never quite clicked in Arizona. But was pretty good in Baltimore years before that. And then they bring in the fastest wide receiver, or the fastest 40 time ever clocked at the NFL Combine, with Xavier Worthy. I am really interested to see how these guys do, because in my mind, they're all kind of the same receiver. They're all the kind of small, shifty, really fast guys, which clearly Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs really like to use. But, they don't really have an AJ Brown. They don't really have a Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown route runner. They don't have, like I said, an AJ Brown physical guy or a DK Metcalf. They're all kind of just fast, and maybe that'll work. I guess we'll wait and see. I'm not putting. Far be it from me to say anything the Chiefs do is not going to work. But at least in my head, they all seem like kind of the same receiver. So we'll really see, is one of them able to separate himself from the other two? Is one of them able to be like, hey, I am the clear-cut number one? As for how the division ends up, obviously, I do think the Chiefs are going to win it. I don't think there's much of a question there. It's the Chiefs, back-to-back Super Bowl champs, going for a third. The first time in history that would be done. Again, you'll hear about that all year long. It's all you're going to hear about. But coming up in second, I've got the LA Chargers. I do think Jim Harbaugh is able to, take them from the 5th overall pick to at least competing for a wild card spot. Following them is going to be the Broncos and then the Raiders. And finally, we come to the NFC West. And you guys, y'all do not understand how long I have been waiting for this season. As a Cardinals fan, look, last year was a complete wash. We knew that nothing was going to happen last year. Kyler was out for at least half the season. Before the season started, we thought maybe he's not going to play at all. We had zero expectations. It's been like 2 years since I've been able to root for this team with any, actual thought that they could do anything. But now I actually have hope, and that's dangerous because it can get crushed. I don't know if it will. I think they're going to be good. I'm really hoping they're going to be good because look at this team, okay? When Kyler came back last year, they were a top 10 offense. I really think that they can do that again this year. I think that the Cardinals will be a top 10 offense over the course of the whole season. I really want to say top 5, but I'm going to stay conservative. I'm going to stay realistic here, and I'm just going to say top 10, okay? But you've got K1 fully healthy, full off season in this Drew Petzing offense. Love it. You got Michael Wilson in year 2. You got James Conner and Trey Benson in the backfield. You got Trey McBride, one of the up-and-coming stars at the tight end position. And oh yeah, just some guy named Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in to be your wide receiver 1. The best player in the entire draft is coming to the desert. How can you not be excited for this? I can barely contain my excitement for this season, okay? You don't understand what this means to me. The Cardinals are going to be good, and I'm so freaking pumped about it, okay? Marvin Harrison Jr. has got Offensive Rookie of the Year written all over him. So they're going to be good, okay? I'm pumped. But there's other teams to talk about in this division, so I guess we should move on to them too. The Seahawks, when I first heard that Pete Carroll was leaving the team / getting fired / whatever the heck happened there, I thought this is the beginning of the end. This is how the Seahawks fall from grace. And, then they went and got Mike Macdonald. So turns out that's not happening because Mike Macdonald is going to be a very good head coach for the Seahawks. He was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens and their fantastic defense last year, and it really looks like Legion of Boom 2.0 might be coming to life before our very eyes here in Seattle. So they're going to be scary. I'm a little concerned about their offense. I really like their running backs, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. Wide receivers DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN, of course. I said this last year that I didn't think Geno was going to be, the guy anymore, and he was still good. So, I can't really say that again this year, but, if they had a different quarterback, I think the Seahawks would go a lot further than they're going to go this year. Put it that way. I still think Geno's going to be good, but, you put a different guy in this situation, and I think the Seahawks could get taken to the next level. So we'll see what Geno can do. But, not super high hopes for him. As for the Rams, the Rams I think are also going to be good this year. This entire division is going to be good this year. I hate saying it, but it's true. Even without Aaron Donald, I still think that the Rams are going to be great. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp all year again. I mean, they're both healthy. How did Puka fall that far, and how did the Rams get him? It's infuriating that after watching them dominate with Cooper Kupp, you just pick up a Puka Nacua on day 3 of the draft. It's ridiculous. So the fact that they have 2 of the best receivers in the league drives me absolutely up the wall. I really think that they're going to have one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL, and that this team is going to be scary. Matt Stafford, great quarterback. There's not a lot to say about a Sean McVay team with Stafford and Kupp and Nacua and Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. The Rams are going to be really good. As for the 49ers, Super Bowl hangovers do exist. They do. It took a while to get the Eagles last year, but it did eventually. I mean, the Eagles collapsed like nobody's business last year, and I think it's going to get the 49ers as well. This is kind of their last chance with Brock Purdy making absolutely no money. The only way that they are able to have Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, all on that team. I didn't even mention the defense. The only way they're able to afford all of that is because their quarterback is making no money. And the fact that after this year, they're probably going to have to change that and make sure that Brock Purdy gets paid. I really think that this is kind of their last opportunity here. I don't know if they're going to be, as dominant, as good as they were last year. On paper, they should be. There's no reason to think that they would be any worse than they were last year. But, I'm not superstitious. I do kind of believe in Super Bowl hangovers. We've seen it too many times to not think that it's a real deal. I just, for some reason in my gut, just feel like the Niners aren't going to be the Niners that they were last year. And that, like I said, this is really their last opportunity before the structure of the team really changes. And they'd better make the most of it. So I do have the Rams winning the division for that very reason, followed by the 49ers. And then I do have the Cardinals coming in third in the division, fighting for a playoff spot. We'll see if they actually get one or not. And then the Seahawks round out the division in fourth. I don't think that is I'm not trying to say that the Seahawks are going to be bad. I do think they're going to be good. I honestly think that, the NFC West could be akin to the AFC North last year, where the worst team still had a winning record. I think that's very possible here for the NFC West. I am clearly a Cardinals fan here, so I'm gonna put them at third. Maybe it's a little bit of wishful thinking, but at the end of the day, that's what I've got. I've got Rams, 49ers, Cardinals, Seahawks, and that's what I've got. So that is kind of a brief breakdown, a real quick rapid fire chat about each of the teams in every division in the NFL. We went through the NFC West, the AFC West. I'm partially just making sure that I actually talked about everybody here. It looks like I did. I think it's going to be a really interesting season. This was a real quick breakdown, kept it nice and casual. As I said, I don't know exactly what the future is going to hold for me and this channel. I'm not sure exactly what my schedule is going to look like or how exactly I'm going to go about doing this. This is a hobby. This is for fun. I'm going to make sure that it stays that way going forward. So expect at least, intermittent updates and videos from me as the season goes along. But until next time, my name is Andrew. This is Water Cooler Quarterback, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.